So just to give our listeners a bit of a background, Robyn is Robyn Emerson, and she's actually the Africa Housing Forum Manager for Habitat for Humanity in the Africa Area Office. But she's also a founding president of Women in Real Estate. And it's really interesting, Robyn, how you stayed within this, I think, it's called the build space. Am I using that correctly? If I've made a mistake, let me know.
Yeah, built environment. Yeah, built environment, the building space.
Yeah, yeah, and even in the work that you do as a volunteer has really been around that as well. She's also the one of the people who are involved in founding the Kilimani Project Foundation. Kilimani is a neighborhood here in Nairobi that has seen a lot of changes taking place. It was traditionally a residential area where it was sort of, it's a single family home with a nice piece of land and area of garden that has now become a little bit more higher density, but also with a little bit more commercial coming up. So the foundation has tried to sort of merge this new look of Kilimani, but still retain some of the green spaces and the services that were there before. So she's a co-founder of that, and also a part of KEPSA, which is the Kenya Private Sector Alliance. She also sits on that forum and is a trustee of Crafts with Meaning, which is a social enterprise that is really looking at the artisans and trying to get them a good market for what it is that they're doing. And she's also on the board of Build Her. They've got great furniture, by the way. So it's exciting to have you on board, Robyn. And as we sort of go into this and wait to see if our other panelists will be able to join us, if you could just tell us a little bit about how you ended up in this space, right? Because you've got the entrepreneurial piece of it. You've got the fact that you founded Black Americans in Kenya. So you're sort of diaspora that is now, I guess, expatriate or now Kenyan. I don't know. You explain a little bit of that to us. Let us know how your life led you to this. It would be really good to hear from you, and not just what we have on the page, but to just have a little bit of the backstory.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Wangeci, for that welcome. And I think I first want to start off by acknowledging Warren Boy and for having this vision, for creating this platform as we talk about Africa wealth and how do we tap into it, how do we access it, how do we celebrate the brave ones that have come into this space. And because it is a risk, right? So it is on the backs of people taking risk that they are making these bold decisions and taking these actions. And so, Anne, kudos to you. And it's just really an honor to be here again to talk about ways that we can plug in and get in and be a part of this wealth creation. And for me, wealth is not only just the financial wealth, right? We can talk about wealth in so many ways. Wealth of spirit, wealth of, relationships, wealth of networks, wealth of opportunities, wealth of learnings. So I think that when I speak about wealth, and then definitely when I think about the wealth of Africa, and then you think about the wealth of the diaspora, all of that is such an inspiring combination and just presents so many opportunities inside of all of them. So how did I get to be here? is just that I took a lot of risk, to be quite honest with you. If I think about it, it was just a string of risk. And where did that come from? So from the beginning, about almost 20 years ago now, I saw an opportunity to educate young people from the US about what was happening around the world. I think that that's part of a knowledge that is missing, and Lord knows when we see what's happening in the US, the limited thinking, if you will, is giving a limited view about policies, worldview is limiting what makes available. And so I created this global citizen educational program, and I took about 600 young people to 8 different countries around the world, and Kenya was one of those places. And so it was totally a risk inside of that. And then I created more opportunities, if you will, to come to Kenya. I worked at the Prime Minister's office at the time when we had a Prime Minister, and were helped to set up the National Development Vision, and worked in the Secretariat for developing Vision 2030, which the country right now still refers to as its Northern Star for development. And so as an urban planner, I happen to be an urban planner, I got a really great sense of where development and opportunities were coming, as I said, was in the beginning founding stages of Vision 2030. And so I got to see, okay, where is this country heading? Where are the opportunities coming? And I think this ties into what we're talking about in regards to the diaspora and taking advantage of trade and investment. Is a key part of that is there is some research and some homework that will need to be done in regards to what each different country is setting as a strategy, because that's where they are going to be investing. That's where they're going to be making opportunities available, be it EPZs and places, environmental zones. I figure, apologies, I have been out of that space on language wise, but where are they going to be setting up those zones and investing? Where are they going to be putting money in terms of infrastructure, be it all types of infrastructure, hard infrastructure, soft, digital, academic infrastructure? You want to be tracking where they're setting their sites, because right along with those plans is going to be allocations, if you will. Governments are going to be making allocations and investments. They're going to be opening up perhaps bonds and so forth that are going to be available, whether it's governmental bonds, green bonds, or either various financing houses are also going to be tracking those trends, and they're going to be making those resources available. So I'm coming to say that it is the research part and getting to understand the economy, the national development plans that they might have, and really understanding them and finding out where some of those opportunities are. So that's I hope I answered that question of how I got here.
No, it's fascinating, and I'm glad that after traveling with the students and showing them the world, that you decided to settle in Kenya. So karibu. I'm sure you've been given a Swahili name by now.
Mini. From all 47. 47
Fantastic.
counties.
Yeah. So actually, one of the things that struck me when I was reading your bio, and I really wish that Kenneth Gbandi was here with us today. One of the things that struck me was the fact that the two of you, and I would ask our audience to go ahead and look at your bios in a little bit more detail, is that you have used the arts, you've used the creative side to create wealth, to generate opportunities for communities, and in a less sort of traditional sector. And so my question to you is whether this was deliberate, this unconventional path, or whether you sort of stumbled into it. Yeah.
I'd say stumble. I would say, because actually when I noted thought about the question that you're going to pose, I actually didn't relate to it as art. So I found it interesting that that's what you saw or interpreted. I didn't see it as art. But it's funny enough that there is an art to community making. There is an art to networking. There is an art to building partnerships. So in that sense, I have sought out to, oh, there he is, great. I have sought out to discover what that art of networking is. What is the art of creating partnerships and relationships and building on them and creating synergies, like-mindedness and spaces to learn and grow. I have sought out to do that. So I think about one environment of that networking among people from the diaspora. And of course, as Anne spoke earlier, we can think about there are returnees, right? People that were abroad, they're of African descent, first generation, and they're returning back to either their home country or another African country. But there is a flood, if you will, of other people of African descent, several generations, like you said, we might now call them expats, but for them, they are diaspora, and they are diaspora that they see they do have a direct connection, and they are trying to engage inside of this growth and what's happening here in Africa. So there was a group of us that were entrepreneurs that we set up our own learning circle, and we modeled it after Goldman Sachs 10,000 Women Entrepreneurship course. And we trained ourselves. We met every, we set a time that we met every time. And that was, a dentist that lived in the US for several years and who returned here and set up her dental practice. That was another woman that was a nurse in the US, but she returned here with her husband that she married there, returned here to Kenya, and she wanted to set up a cosmetics firm. And that cosmetics firm now is one of the top firms here in Kenya, but she's also exported that company back to the US, and it's now competing back over in the US with some of the top cosmetic firms. There is, just an amazing group of us, and we built our networks and our companies, and they grew because of the art of collaborating and networking. Another example, if you talk about art and how I see the art of these diasporas and people learning what are the resources and the doors that I need to open when I come into a new country. Who do I need to connect with? Who do I need to learn from? Who are the people? So for me, that's where the art, as I thought about your question, where the art comes in for me, is how do you actually take time to learn? Is it art or science of networking, right? So some people might be like, the science is the steps, here are 10 steps, 1, 2, 3. But the art part for me has it be an exploration. Something that I'm actually willing to have something blow up because of something didn't work right, but there is the beauty in it, and I can see the organic growth and the nature of figuring out how do I establish myself newly inside of a place that has full potential.
Well, thank you for that, Robyn. And Kenneth, karibu sana, welcome. I hope I'm saying your name right. Is the G silent, or is it the B that's silent? How do you say your last name?
Gbandi.
Gbandi. Okay, so the G is silent. Okay.
Thank you very much.
I'm so pleased you were able to join us. I was just telling our listeners that, you've taken a bit of an unconventional path in some of the work that you've done. And I call it unconventional just because it has really focused on the cultural and the creative side of things when it has come to creating opportunity. Because not everybody would look at the fact that, you've formed a football club, or that you have, you started Miss Nigeria in Germany as a traditional path, because it isn't, right? And I was just wondering what made you go down that particular way. I mean, your background is in peace research and conflict mediation, and you have been part of the Senate's Foreigners Advisory Council, and not just that, you are also a chair of the Anti-Discrimination Committee in Hamburg. So, given that background, how does that then merge together with how you've been able to bring in the this cultural aspect, and not only just brought it in, but you've also been able to create opportunities by really harnessing what I like to call the arts. So could you tell us a little bit about how you got there, or what inspired you to be a co-founder of the Nigeria Football Club, why you started Miss Nigeria Germany, and yeah, how did you get there? Tell us a little bit.
Thank you very much. And my apology for coming in a little bit late. I was just carried away when I was listening to Robyn, the way she was, trying to explain this because I was actually not very sure, what actually you meant by this act of. So when I listened to her, that really gave me a little bit of insight. And thank God with your moderation, you're also able to make it clearer. You're right. My background was actually geography and regional planning. That was my first degree at the University of Calabar. And so when I got to Germany, I got a cultural shock. Of course, I wasn't expecting them to open their hands and welcome me to Germany, but at least I was expecting to see what I felt were standard, relations in a foreign country. Looking at the Hollywood, looking at the films we've watched in Africa, where you have opportunities everywhere and the rest of. So I was expecting that. But when I came in, I realized that even sitting down next to a close person in the train becomes a problem. And sometimes people have to, walk out from the seat just because they are sitting next to a black man. And that was 1904, when I first, 1994, sorry, when I first, got into Germany. And so trying to digest that shock, I got admitted at the University of Hamburg. And again, that followed me. And when we speak in class, I hear about what we call the 5 Ks in Africa, about criminality, about, crisis, about crime, about, being poor and the rest of them. And I said, yes, I really agree that Africa, we have poor people in Africa, but Africa is not poor. We have poor people in Nigeria, but Nigeria is not poor. And so when I think about the areas in VI, which I know very well, when I think about the Obudukato Ranch in Calabar, which I know very well, and I begin to wonder there's a disconnect. I think the problem is that these people, they are watching a lot of, media, a lot of news about Africa, that they just claim that everything, I just think everything about Africa is a wrong, or it's about war, about disease, and about poverty. So that was how I felt that the best way to basically convince these people, was to, create a media, a platform where we could, reach out to them in a very soft manner, like Robyn was trying to, define the art, in a soft manner where people can, get to listen to you without being aggressive about it. And so we formed the African Heritage Magazine. And but we have this dilemma that our people, I want to be very careful to define our people, but sometimes they are not the people who are very, very keen in reading, especially the kind of people we have within my time when we came in. And so we have to have a soft sell magazine where we can project the culture of the people at the same time sending out information. And that was how the African Heritage Magazine was born. And so the instant reaction was that when this magazine had been circulated, and our German friends and European friends were saying, no, this cannot be in Africa. These pictures look like you just imported some pictures from Nollywood or from Los Angeles, and you said they are in Nigeria. And that gave us the feeling that, wow, if they could think that this area, this piece of land, or these pictures are from US or from UK, then it means that we need to see more of that story. We need to go out from this the danger of a single story and begin to, to define our own narrative. So that was how I got into the magazine, which helped. And so, but I realized that magazine alone will not solve the problem. And so we have to look at how do we get the things that the Germans like about Africa, and to be able to get them closer to us, to understand how we think and how we behave. And that leads to the Miss Nigeria. And I can remember a very single story, if I'm not taking so much time. When we started Miss Africa, Germany, we were looking for sponsorship and the rest of them. And so I went to Mercedes-Benz, to ask for sponsorship. And so when I got the guy sitting in front of me, I said, we want to organize a cultural event, Miss Africa. And the guy laughed for at least not less than 30 seconds. It was an embarrassing laugh. But I was trying to understand what's so funny about what I said. And when he recovered himself, he asked me a question. He said, do you know what it is to have a beauty? Do you know what a beauty is in Germany? Do you know how Germany define their beauty? A blonde, blonde eyes, blonde hair, slim. And how do I want to, get into a community that define beauty in such a way? And I'm coming with the African beauty, in Germany. It was one side embarrassing, but the other side, it opened my perspective. What he was trying to tell me is that the definition of beauty from the German perspective is different from African perspective. And so how do I want to, bring in this cultural mix and be able to be successful? Well, the long and short story is that after our 3, 4, 5 years about the Miss Germany and Miss Africa Germany, the most beautiful girl was from Eritrea. She became Heidi Klum, the most beautiful girl. Ilona from Ghana became the 10th most beautiful girl, the world 10th most beautiful girl, and she was a candidate from Miss Africa Germany. And so one can begin to see that from this perspective, we're not only trying to change the narrative, but we also begin to change the way the Germans also take us. And that got into opportunities for our folks in Germany. And I can tell you that we have, going forward, we had so many of our folks go into the the beauty, the fashion and beauty areas, producing the Voice of Germany was one time a Nigerian, the Voice of Germany was one time a Ghanaian, the Kenyans were taking the lead, with beauty pageants, across Germany. So it opens up a world of opportunity. And I wish I could see the guy who told me, what do I know what beauty is, and tell him that yes, we have redefined beauty from our own perspective and it's selling. Anyway, having done all this, I realized that culture is one thing, information is one thing, but being able to, the politics set the rules for all what we are doing. How culture is defined, how people engage in businesses, the opportunities in businesses can only be defined by the politicians. And that was what drove me that yes, cultural perspective is good, news is good, but being involved and in politics makes a lot of difference. And that's what brought me into politics, eventually got me elected as the chairman of anti-discrimination. And I'm happy to say that within the time we stayed there in the parliament, in the Hamburg Senate Integration Beirat, we're able to push a law where, at least it's on paper, which they are trying to implement, and I must give them the credit, that at least 20% of migrants must be employed in the public ministries. And that was a part of the things we were able to achieve. We're also able to achieve that migrant organizations who have all the Germans and all the Europeans being the chairman of the migrant organization, working for Africans, but they are the people who are the leadership. We begin to change that narrative. No, you cannot shave our head at our absence. If you want to define, project for us, we need to be involved in defining those projects and be able to. So I think it's exploded now. And so looking backwards, I think we've been able to set a record and what we could do, to change the narrative using what Robyn defined as different arts to do that. And I believe currently now that it's not having done that. 28 years in Germany, it is time to export those mix of what we have learned, the mix of the good things about the Africans, about the diaspora, and what we have learned in Germany and Europe and in diaspora. It's time we bring it back home and begin to infect our people. And that is why African Wealth Conference becomes very, 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 very important and a pilot role in achieving that.
Yeah, thank you for that, Kenneth. And sort of going back to you, Robyn, and just picking up on a little bit of what Kenneth said about, how do you sort of change that perspective in the spaces that you're in? And as you are in the process of changing that perspective, how do you open up opportunities for others? There was a speaker in the previous panel that I was on. His name is Karoba Kenywa. And he said that entrepreneurship was one of the most generous things that you could do, because you would end up giving so much of not just your time and talent, but even in the creation of these opportunities, not just for yourself, but for all those others around you. Would you like to touch on that a little bit, and especially going back to this idea of diaspora wealth being created, you know, whether that funding is stemming from the diaspora and that's happening here on the continent, or whether, as you explained with one of your friends, you start here and then you look at export opportunities into the rest of the diaspora. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, sure. I think the part about, you know, how are we linking up and changing perspectives, if you will? And so I think that, Kenneth, that was just brilliant what you shared about, you know, Eurocentric beauty. Yeah, I mean, it has so much, it's something that people are dealing with around the world still. It has such a grip on us, if you will. And unfortunately, even us sometimes we hold on to that description of what is beauty. So thank you so much for, you know, opening up the world's eyes to beauty is whatever I say it is. And beauty, you know, it has all forms and dynamics to it, and it can't be put in a box, and it's not privy to one type of beauty. And so, of course, the real thing, what I can hear behind, hopefully, and what I can hear where you've taken that a step further, is beauty. Behind that is value. Right? Right? So behind that is value, because then you treat things that you value a certain kind of way. And so that is what I really do here, is what is hopefully opening up. And so I think as we think about the people in the diaspora, you know, I think it's tied to also Africa. How do we, you know, people have to see the beauty in Africa, and then the value of it rises, if you will. And it can rise above this romanticized nature of Africa. What I'm excited about is Africa moving into as a strong contender, right? Moving into a strong contender of what economies and what other you know, countries and development opportunities provide. So I think Africa moving out of this romanticized notion of who she is and where she's been for so long, and moving into, she's a strong contender in this fight. She's a strong contender. And when we look at places where to invest, and where there are great opportunities for return, and where there are great opportunities for impact, and it happens to be among places that look like, with people that look like us, right? So then that might come in the romantics notion of it. But if you just lay the numbers on the table, she's a wonderful contender for investment opportunities. And so then that is where I, you know, come in. Thank you, Kenneth. That is where we come in, and we break that, if you will, with people in the diaspora. Because to be honest with you, there is a skittish nature, to be honest with you. There is a skittish approach to investing in Africa. The challenges perhaps of corruption, you know, infrastructure, transparency, this, that, and the other. But when also my work is inside of bringing in the reality that happens everywhere. The potential for all of those things is everywhere. And so the risk and the calculations of those risks, you kind of do it on a weighted scale, right? You do it on a weighted scale of the risk, and then you come back, okay, Africa's a very welcoming place. And for me to also put my chips on the table and to take a risk, if you will, because risk, you can't avoid that anywhere. But this is a worthy place for me to put my chips on the table, to get acquainted enough, to do enough of my research, that, you know, that I've measured risk and I'm okay with it. That's part of it. Many people have lost their shirts. So if you lose your shirt, that's not new. You don't have to go back and put that on. It's an Africa thing. It's a part of investing. It's a part of getting in somewhere and trying to gain a return on as little of investment as possible. And so that's really where I kind of just take the emotions out of it, put the facts on the table. So the opportunities as they are, and they are many, There are very many, capital markets, direct real estate investment, entrepreneurship. The one thing about investing in Africa is that the opportunities are vast. The opportunities for growth are extraordinary. The barriers to entry are less, if you will, than in many places. And so for me, I just continue to just highlight all of those opportunities rather than the fear that is out there in terms of the interpretations and why one might hold back their participation.
And yeah, thank you for that, Kenneth. I mean, Robyn, and I'm seeing over here we had a couple of people that agreed with you. I think Dolapo has said how they agree with what you said about opportunities being in Africa, and that's why they've said that that's why the Chinese and the Arabs are trying to get a piece of the opportunities that we see here on the continent. But especially when if you're still living in Europe, Kenneth, what do you see as some of those opportunities? Of whether those remain services and goods that may not be provided in the same way on the continent as they are being provided there, or whether it's in the listed securities like what Robyn was talking about, because we do see that here. We do see that our bourse across the continent have been giving some pretty substantial returns. If you start to look at the macro economies, some of the fastest growing economies in the world remain on the continent. Rwanda, I think, was number 3 last year, according to the IMF. So, there are these opportunities. So what sort of conversations are taking place within the diaspora when they start to look at opportunities for Africa? Could we hear a little bit from your perspective on that, Kenneth?
I totally, once again, agree with Robyn, 100%. Why do I say that? Our former central bank governor, who is currently now a state governor, in one of the meetings we had with him in the diaspora, we emphasized about the risk of investment in Africa, including loss of money, including loss of land, including XYZ. He did not disagree with us. He said, you know what? You are absolutely correct. But you know what, again, he added, you could wait until all the problems you mentioned are solved before you invest. But I can assure you, by the time you want to invest, there will not nothing to invest. Because those people who are willing to take the risk will be willing to actually also make the profit. I got a piece of land just a few less than a year, less than 2 years, some quite good sum of money, with diasporans coming together. What happened? How do I get that in the first place? Probably I will share that with you. As the chairman of the Nigerians in Diaspora Organization Europe, we're able to secure 2.3 billion US dollar. I repeat, 2.3 billion US dollar, which is supposed to be a humanitarian fund to be invested in the housing industry, to build about 650,000 housing units. The argument for securing that fund was basically that when you realize how much the government, the European government, the Western government spend on the per capita of an African, who they probably want to repatriate to XYZ because of the refugee crisis, how much they tend to keep them here, we could address the cost of pushing these people out of Africa in the first place. And we realized that most of the major reasons of pushing the African youth is because of lack of perspective. They just see there's nothing around them that could, So when we begin to invest, we're not asking for handouts. When we begin to invest in opportunities and in the human capacity building in Africa, that the narrative and the concept can change. So that was what actually gave us that amount. And because we believe that with the 650,000 housing unit, we should go into artisans, the electricians, the plumbers. Of course, nobody wants to get any substandard houses or invest in fast, but it means that we need to train and retrain them, make them to relearn what they know in the best international practice, and now deploy them as direct laborers, across the federation. And it was the convention. It was what convinced our humanitarian, spender to come as a partner with us. Unfortunately, like also Robyn said, because of corruption in Africa, because of politicians being self-centered, they decided to to kill that project. One of the funny things they were asking was that Nigeria is not in a war. We don't have humanitarian crisis. So why do we have to go and get the humanitarian fund? We said this is not a loan. You are going to China to seek for a loan less than that amount and mortgaging our future. And this is somebody, or this is an organization that is ready to partner with us, to make that loan available for us. And so it was quite heartbreaking that at the end of the day, they killed that project. But I said, okay, you can kill, you can destroy a project where you cannot destroy a dream. So we went home to organize ourselves in the diaspora and to get about 550 plots of land where we're going to develop as a diaspora estate. And then you cannot believe that before we said Jack Robinson, that almost 60% of that plot of land are already gone. And if you compare what we, for competition reason, I will keep it out there. But if you compare to what we got that land as of the time we got it, and to what it is now, it is almost unbelievable, 10 times higher than what we have, we got that land from. So it just give you an example of what Robyn was talking about, that Europe is saturated. China is saturated. That's why they are ready to spend billions of dollars to look for new routes, new investment routes. In my course of peace and security study, we realized that the next war, which actually already started in Ukraine, is a war of resources. Who controls resources? Because these developed countries, in fact, to be honest with you, and I pray it's not the case, what we're seeing in Ukraine is the beginning of a fight for resource control that is going to come. Because what I'm trying to say in effect that the Africa is a potential land, it's a virgin land for investment, where you have almost 100% return on investment. And so that's why the second scramble for Africa for resources. So what is important, and that's actually the message I'm going to send across, that it is time for us, the Africans in diaspora, to move in with all our expertise and our experiences and begin to invest in Africa. So that we don't because it's always very easy to say we're allowing China to invest in Africa, we're allowing Europeans to invest in Africa. For a common man in the village, he's not interested about who makes his life better. He's not interested in who builds the road. He's not interested in who builds the medical center. He just wants to have a decent life. And he's willing to work with anybody who is going to give him that person a decent life. So we know that the Africa is a virgin land. We know it's a place you can have return on investment 100%. It is our responsibility to begin to go to our respective countries and begin to invest in Africa so that we can be in control of our resources. And that's what I hope that this, part of this African Wealth Conference is going to be able to resound again to the diaspora community to, to work on it.
Thank you for that. I really like what you said about, looking at resources and those who control it. And there was somebody who had asked earlier about whether there was a catalog of industries that have been researched, right? Where there could be some sort of database where these opportunities that you're talking about can be accessed. I don't know of any particular database, but I do know that that's some of the work that the Regal Africa group does. So if you are looking at investing on the continent, and especially East Africa, I know that Anne and her team have those resources available to you. And as you continue to listen to the people on these various panels, you can also hear some of the expertise that they have across board. I mean, literally north, south, east, and west when it comes to the African continent. Anne has been able to bring in quite a mix of people and resources to be able to answer some of those questions. So yeah, so that's what I would say to that. But going back over to you, Robyn, I would just ask you a little bit more about some of these opportunities that you see, and if you could walk us through a little bit of that journey that you mentioned, that you had a group of diasporans that were, or returnees that were in Kenya, that were getting together to try and educate yourselves on how this entrepreneurship journey could look like. when you're on the continent and you're looking to either start a new business or even grow one that's big enough to be providing exports. Could you talk a little bit about that? Because you did mention that how you got here was through being able to take risks. Yeah. And how do you calculate some of these risks, and how do you sort of build this community that walks with you when you are taking these decisions and looking at these opportunities, but also weighing out the risks that come with it? If you could just talk a little bit about that, Robyn, that would be fantastic.
Great, thank you. Let me just I'll piggyback on Ken's remarks that people in need don't care where the money has come from, if you will. They are seeking, for it to be developed. Ken, we hosted a housing forum, an Africa housing forum, where we took stock in housing across Africa. Ken, just in Nigeria, there's something of a deficit of about 17 million houses that are needed. Ghana, we're about 10 million. Here in Kenya, we're about 6 million. Let's see, Liberia, I think it's about 2 million. You're exactly right. I think if we went and built the house, I don't think anybody standing there in any of those informal settlements would stop and say, wait, now who's doing this? Where is this money coming from? No, they are getting, shelter that is, extremely needed. And in addition to all the other services that you mentioned. And so I think tying it to your question, Wangeci, is it does take some kind of focus and strategy, and it will not happen overnight. And so, if you're in this, and he spoke about, a group of investors, they went in, it didn't work, and he immediately got back on the horse. It sounds like they immediately got back on the horse, looked for other opportunities, and said, we're not finished here. We're not stopping. We're going to continue to keep this network and this group together and see how we can get, achieve our ultimate goal. And so I think what I have done is the exact same thing, and with others, is looked at. But one of the things, when I went out on this journey, I found that there's a lack of information that is kind of open sourced, if you will. There's, information that is cloaked behind, you only find it if you talk to somebody and this person knows it, and it's really cloaked behind. So one of the approaches that I have taken in my growth here is opening up this information, putting it into public source domain, and so that anybody can access it. I think it sounds like also along one of the commitments that Anne has. How do we open this information up so that it can be freely accessible for whomever is seeking it? So that's why, with my colleague, we co-partnered the first book that open sources the process about how to build in Kenya. So when I was the CEO of Kenya Property Developers Association, and I engaged in the regulatory bodies, and I engaged with developers, there was a mismatch about how to go about building and development. But then you would go to the regulatory body and they'd be like, yeah, here it is. So we told you. But we're like, well, where is this information easily accessible? So we collected all of that information and we compiled it in a book and published it 3 years ago, a step-by-step guide on what you need to do to build in Kenya. So building in Kenya, it's heralded as across the sector, from the government to the users, and just saying that thank you very much for making this available. In addition to that, a practice of bringing, how do I be in a community and live in the space, and who do I talk to? Again, opened up that process and hold these public participatory town halls, Ken, if you will, that allows people to come and actually speak to a governmental body and say, this is my concern and what I'm dealing with. Completely busted open how people engage and relate and get what they need to have done. So I think that what I'm saying here is that we need to get in. When we get into those spaces, don't get in and gather the information and keep going. Like, oh, I got what I needed, and here I'm off. how do we take what you've learned, in whatever bit of it is, and put it out there, right? And put what you learned and somebody else will build on it and find, no, it's changed from 6 months ago. It used to be like that, but now this has happened. So it might not be writing a book, but you might do a blog. You might do it, you might do a tweet thread. You might, do a video. What I'm saying is that everybody doesn't have to come in and start from zero. We can all share what we're doing, what we're learning, how we're finding out how we're making our ways, open this door, open that door, take a left here, take a right there, and that we can each be growing on, what we've all discovered. And I think for me, that's kind of one of my greatest focuses, where I've put my focus, is knowledge sharing, information being open and available to anyone, and building networks. That's where I've kind of put my focus, and I think that that's what we need. And let me say another thing to this also, is that there are large conglomerates, if you will. So the Council of Corporations for Africa, this is a US based thing. They're pulling together like the multinational organizations, and they are all pulling their money together. And as we know, in a national economy, it is the small SMEs, mid-sized companies, and even the informal sectors that you put all of them together. They're even larger than those multinational corporations. And I think we need to be thinking along those lines also when we're talking about investing in Africa. Unfortunately, those large conglomerates, they are having greater voice, but just because they also have an advocacy strategy behind them, I think we should be pulling together and doing greater advocacy on the needs of the diaspora. So we've started that here in Kenya. I know that Ghana has, also thought about, look, you all are coming home. We know there's a Blaxit around the world. You all are coming home. How do I receive you? How do I welcome your funds? How do I welcome your presence, so that you can see that you want to keep your money here and we can grow it together?
That's I'm just digesting what you said, Robyn, and you've given us so much. I really like what you said about not needing to start from zero, right? And being there to sort of show other people the steps that can be followed, and having that mentality of abundance, really, because it's recognizing that there's enough to go around for everybody, and that not everybody has to go through the pains, the growing pains that you went through to get to where you are, and that we achieve more when you show the way, right? When there's a roadmap that's available to everybody. So I really like that, and I like the challenge that you've put on the table to everybody, especially in that entrepreneurial space, to really understand that there is room for everybody, and that there is enough to go around. And we're almost to a close with our time. And then before we do that, what I'd really like to hear from you, Kenneth, and also to hear from you, Robyn, is what you would think of as I guess your, we could call it your parting shot to our listeners, who have been really good with putting comments in the chat. Thank you very much. But again, if you have any questions to the listeners, please go ahead and put them in the chat there. Our panelists will get to those questions, but even as they give us their parting shot. So if you could give us your 3 take-homes that we should keep in mind, that would be fantastic. And I'll start with you, Kenneth.
I think I've listened to Robyn very, very, attentively, and I think I've also followed the comments on the chat, and I think it shows that we are hitting it home. That at least they are understanding that that's the right thing to do. I mean, like was said, collaboration. I totally agree with you. I think Robyn's have also made a lot of about how we can collaborate. My parting shot is that collaboration is very, very important. Networking is very, very important. What I personally think, in addition to all what Robyn have said, which is totally correct, is that we need to build a framework, especially a political framework, that will make the reception or the plans of the diaspora acceptable at home. because like I said, like in Hamburg, all what we are planning can be torpedoed just by the political class who probably felt, that we're coming to take out so much light from them, or we're trying to make something different. So in addition to all what we have said, we should also get involved in politics. Getting involved in politics means that we will join to set the rules, how this, collaboration and how this investment could be managed. And that is actually one of the reasons why I decided to, head back to Nigeria. I mean, Robyn spoke about the diaspora returnees. Yes, I'm leading that in Nigeria, and I want to get as much diaspora as possible, as many diaspora as possible, from Germany, from Europe, to come to Nigeria and begin to get involved in politics. So together we can, get this collaboration Robyn is talking about. We can get this network Robyn is talking about, and begin to put it into policy framework, where the diasporas, business can be protected, where they have a leeway to get in, without these old politicians, standing away for us. So networking is important, collaboration is important, but also getting politically active is also very important.
I do have a couple of questions for you, Kenneth, before we go to Robyn. There's somebody who has said, Kolabomi Adeko has said, I agree with the political framework necessity. Investing when some government policy can jettison years of effort is one big fear of many would-be investors. And then there's a direct question from Joy Zenz, who's asking, how can diaspora work together in Germany as Africans and support Africa? So if you could comment on the comment and answer the question, that would be great.
Well, I'm surprised that Joy is actually asking that question, because she has actually been in the forefront of building an alliance across the diaspora. She's been a champion of bringing the women together, the professional African women in Europe, AWE, where I was, a little bit flattered when I was given the African Role Model of the Year, but I see their work very, very important. I see the work of African World Conference very, very important. And I think, again, what Robyn said, I wish I could have her every day, to listen to her, because, I feed into one of the things she's trying to say. We don't need to give up. We don't expect this is going to be a sprint. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. We just keep repeating that. We keep saying that. We keep giving that. So to answer the question of Joy, we've been collaborating a lot. I mean, like I said, Joy has been a champion of that. Whether from Kenya, whether from Nigeria, we have to, we build this network and we do this collaboration. In fact, the last seminar, actually, the last workshop I attended, and also the speaker in this platform, was how the Kenyans, build, as a special name they call it, a business format in Kenya, where the diaspora have to invest. I've been trying to replicate that model in Nigeria, and I've been reaching out front and back, on so many of those speakers to see how we can build that model together. Oh, they said a circle. Yeah, that's the correct one, circle. How they build a circle in Kenya. I find it amazing. And I'm thinking that if we could replicate that in Nigeria. So good to know we have people like Robyn who I can reach out to, people like Joy who I can reach out to see how they were able to build this model. It's stupidity to start all over again. And like you said, why do you need to start over again when the resources are there? And I also agree. I mean, because of today's world, with the internet world, with so many information bombarding you from left and right, sometimes it's frustrating, to get the right information. So when you have people like Joy, people like Robyn, people like you, who already have this, information, again, that's why they say collaboration becomes the mother of the game. What do you know about this? Where do I get information about that? And then you just key into that. And when we do more of this collaboration in diaspora, together we become the Ubuntu of Africa and be able to make so much difference.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Kenneth. There's a direct question for you, Robyn, before we move to your parting shot. And Sharon Duko is asking, what are your views on the National Housing Project in Kenya? And how can the private sector contribute to this initiative?
Yes, thank you for asking that question. Look, the government needs the private sector. They cannot do it on their own. They don't have the resources to pull off the mandates that they've put before them. Again, I shared the numbers of the deficit, if you will. So the government is seeking private sector individuals, clusters, SACCOs, as he mentioned. And so I think really, again, it's how. So you asked about how the project is going. They're struggling and they're behind on meeting their targets, and those targets are growing exponentially. All right, so it's not that you don't meet your target and the numbers just kind of just disappear. No, the numbers are growing exponentially, and so we need the partners, they need the assistance, and so I would just look at if you can find the financing, because that's really the major part. That land is extremely expensive, growing expensive. I'm not certain the ratio, how it might be in Nigeria, but land in Kenya is extremely expensive for any project. And unfortunately, the government is not necessarily working with landowners, to kind of subsidize some of these projects. And so I think one of the things these are the kind of things, Kenneth, that we can be collectively coming up with. Who is willing in the diaspora to create a land bank? If we just went and bought land, right, created a land bank, and then we worked with people who are willing to do the development side, there may be something inside of there that we can be unlocking and unharnessing some of these complex portions. We could easily do some land banking, if you will, because that's what we need. And we have people that have patient capital that are not in such a rush to get that return, because that then has a challenge with us doing the affordable housing. So not to turn this into a housing workshop, but these are just some of the opportunities and some of the things that we can be getting creative about. Where are the challenges? Where are people getting stuck on finding solutions? And that's what we can be unlocking. But we have to, again, be creative and get to work on that.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Robyn. Thank you again, Kenneth. I really, really appreciate your taking the time answering these questions as wonderfully as you did, but also just sharing the journey, and also just again pointing out some of the work that has already been done, the resources that are available to us, which if we can harness together, we can make all the difference. I was just looking up the recent statistics that we have on remittances. Mm-hmm. And, in Kenya, we're like, remittances. Kenya did 3.78 million US dollars last year. Nigeria did 19.2 billion US dollars, not Kenya shillings, US dollars. Okay. So when Anne is here talking about how can we harness the power of the diaspora, we're looking at huge sums of money. So I think that, going back to what you have both said about collaboration, about networking, about creating policy frameworks that are making sense for the people who want to invest on this continent. I really, truly thank you for all the things that you have highlighted this afternoon. So over to you, Anne. And again, to our panelists today, thank you for your time, for your nuggets, and also for all the work that you have done. It's so inspiring. And we do appreciate the path that you have already forged. And you've made it a lot easier for the rest of us to follow along. So thank you once again. And over to you, Anne.
All right. Thank you, Wangeci, again for a great moderation. Thank you, Robyn, for all your insights. Kenneth, thank you so much for sharing the work that you're doing in Germany. In fact, when you're talking, I was just thinking, Robyn from the US doing work here on the continent, Kenneth from Nigeria, gone to Germany, back home now, really working in this space. All of us doing this is really going to transform the continent. I know Robyn said she didn't want to turn this into a housing forum, but I do have to say something because I'm very passionate about real estate, as I was explaining the opportunities in the real estate space. And really for me, the answer here is the diaspora organizing and then building Africa. The diaspora has to organize. A very small example, Kenya, the Kenyan diaspora remits about almost 400 billion Kenya shillings annually, right? Which is $1 billion shillings every day, which is $10 million every day. And we don't know, we don't see where it's going, right? There's nothing saying the diaspora has built this master plan real estate, this factory. We just know it's been consumed and we have no idea. So what I'm just saying is if the diaspora organizes, right? The Africans around the world say, look, we're taking this $10 million and we're gonna build this factory. We're gonna do real estate. We're going to do this value addition. I mean, if we are organized, then we will have clear transformation and we'll have the data to see what works and what doesn't work. So that's my challenge to everybody as I add to what Robyn and Kenneth said. So thank you very much for sharing with us what you really believe the diaspora needs to do in regards to investment. And I think it just means we need to meet with one another, whether it's through technology or in person. We need to continue talking with one another and then do business with one another, because we have to, again, build trust and share best practices, as Kenneth mentioned.